Good afternoon, everyone. This is the 12th class NCERT chapter 1st, exception handling in Python. Let's start with the introduction. For executing the Python program, sometimes it will not execute due to some of the syntax error, runtime error and logical error in the code. So there are some exceptions also. These exceptions are errors that are get triggered automatically. So let's start with the syntax error. In syntax error, this syntax error are detected when we have not followed the rules of the particular programming language, okay, while writing the program. So over here this is called as parsing error. On encountering a syntax error, the interpreter, means we can say it as a compile time error, does not execute the program unless we rectify the error. Save and rerun the program. When the syntax error is encountered while working in the shell mode, Python displays the name of the error and small description about the error as shown in the figure. So over here what we can say, in this Python program we can execute the code, but sometimes it will not execute due to some of the syntax error, runtime error, or we can say logical error in the code. So these exceptions are error that get triggered automatically. These exceptions are, we can say it as a exception handling. Okay, we will learn about the exception handling also, how we can handle these exceptions, this kind of exceptions. Okay, so I just told you about the syntax error. In syntax error, if there is any mistake in writing the code regarding the rules of code while writing the program, that is called as syntax error. Okay, so we can say it, this is the example. Over here I have mentioned the Python version 3.7.0. so over here we have mentioned marks is equals to 10. If marks is greater than 20, print good score. Over here parenthesis is missing. While writing the printing statement, we have to mention the parenthesis. So this is the syntax error. This is the correction of the code. Def test function marks 20, if marks is greater than 10, print good score. So over here also parenthesis is missing. We have to write like that, print good score. Okay, so now we will talk about exceptions. What is exceptions? Exceptions is basically statement or expression is syntactically correct, there might arise an error during the execution, that we know. So we will see about the exception. Example, trying to open a file that does not exist. Okay, then division of 0 and so on. This is the exception. Okay, this is the examples of exception. We have to open the file and there may be any issue regarding opening the file, then division by 0. This is all about the exceptions. Then such kind of error might disrupt the normal execution of the program, and that is called as exceptions. Means if that program does not execute normally, that is called as exception. An exception is a Python object that represents an error. Okay, when an error occurs during the execution of a program, an exception is said to have been raised. At the time of execution of the program, the exception raised. Such an exception needs to be handled by the programmer so that the program does not terminate abnormally. We have to handle that exception and then only the program will get executed. Okay, while designing the program, a programmer may anticipate such an anomalous situation that may arise during its execution and can address them by including appropriate code to handle that exception. We have to write the code appropriately while writing the program so that the exception will handle and then we can execute the code. Okay, so over here we will see about the built-in exception. What is built-in exception? That is compiler, or we can say it as an interpreter. This is called as built-in exception. Python standard library is an extensive collection of built-in exceptions that deals with the commonly occurring error exceptions by providing the standardized solution for such errors. Okay. So at that time, the exception will occur. On occurrence of built-in exception, the appropriate exception handler code is executed, which displayed the reason along with the raised exception name. The programmer then has to take appropriate action to handle it. Okay, at the time of built-in exception, which displayed the reason along with the raised exception name. We will see the built-in exception in Python. Okay, so at that time we have to handle that exception, and then only we can execute the program in the Python. So this is the type of the name of the built-in exception. Syntax error we know, value error we know. Syntax error already we saw. Value error, that is your variable name, that is data type. IO error means what? If there is the code, if there is the error in the program, it is arised when the file specified in the program statement cannot be opened. Okay, if the file will not open, that is the IO error. Then keyboard interpret, it is raised when the user accidentally hits and delete or accept the key while executing a program, due to which the normal flow of the program is interrupted. Okay, means what? It is raised when the user accidentally hits the delete or accept key while executing a program. While executing the program, if we hit the delete or accept key, at that time the keyboard interrupt will be triggered. Okay, that is your what? Keyboard interrupt. Then import error, it is raised when the module definition will not found. Then EOS error, it is raised when the end of the file condition is reached without reading any data by the input. If we are not able to read the data by the input, that is EOS error. Zero division error, it is raised when the denominator in the division operation is 0. Okay, that is zero division error. Index error, it is raised when the index or subscript in the sequence is out of range. Subscript means what? It is at the base, and superscript means what? It is as the power. Okay, so subscript and superscript error will be found at the index error. The name error we know, logical and global variable name is not found, is not defined. Okay, then identification error, it is raised due to the incorrect identification of the program code, incorrect identification of the code. Then type error, it is raised when the operator is supplied with the value of incorrect data type, that we will see. Type error we know. Okay, then with that is only the data type. Overflow error is what? Means we have to type in type error, we have to take the action about operations also, that is operator, that is only the data type. Then overflow error, it is raised when the result of calculation exceeds the maximum limit of numeric data type. Overflow means what? It is raised when the result of calculation exceeds the maximum limit of the numeric data type. Okay, if the numeric data type exceeds the maximum limit, then it is the overflow error. This is the example of built-in exception. This is the version of Python 3.7.0. we have already talked about. Timing is also mentioned, then date is also defined. Over here we have mentioned print 50 divided by 0. So this is what? This is the zero division error. Okay, then print var plus 40. So over here the name var is not defined. Okay, so it is what? Name error. Then next one is simply written 10 plus 5. So it is type error because the print is not defined. Okay, so that is clear. What is the difference between the type error and the value error? Value error is not. What is the difference between the type error And what else? Type error, and I'm going to find it out. It is all about the type error and the name error, right? Name error is also local and global variable name. Okay, so that is the only define the value error. Value means data type value. Okay, and type error is only the type, that is the print over here mentioned is not defined, that's why it is a type error. That is example of built-in exception. Now we will talk about rising exception. Each time an error is detected in the program, the Python interpreter raises an exception. Exception handlers are defined to execute are defined. Programmers can also forcefully raise exceptions in the program using the raise and assert statement. Once the exception is raised, no further statement in the current block of the code is executed. Okay, once the statement in the current block of code is executed, so the raising an exception involve interpreting the normal flow of the execution of the program. Okay, interpreting means what? Compiling the program and jumping to the part of the program that is exception handler code, which is returned to handle such exceptional situation. Okay, that is only rising exception. We will see the statement, that is rise statement over here, rise exception name optional arguments over here. So this is one of the rising exceptions. Okay, we can see the use of rise statement to throw an exception. This is the rise exception. Oops, an exception has occurred, so throwback over here. Over here what they have mentioned, exception is what? Oops, an exception has occurred, that is rise exception. So what is the use of this? The argument is generally a string that is displayed when the exception is raised. String we have to display. For example, when an exception is raised as shown in this figure, the message oops, and this is displayed along with the brief description of this. This is one of the error type of the error. Okay, so when the exception occurs, this type of message will display. Okay, so this is called as exception, rise exception. So we will talk about the no execution also. The error detected may be built-in exception, or we can say that user defined one. Consider the example given in this 1.6 that uses the rise statement to arise a built-in exception called index error. In this case, the user has only raised the exception but has not displayed any error message explicitly. So in figure 1.6 we will see, in the 1.6 what they have mentioned, that we will see, since the value of variable length is greater than the length of the list number, an index error exception will be raised. The statement following the rise statement will not be executed. Okay, so the message no execution will not be displayed in this case. Then the index error will be occurred. At that time, no execution will not be displayed in this case, in this raised exception. Okay, index error. What is index error? That we already saw what is index error. Subscript. Okay, index or subscript in the sequence is out of range. Okay, at that time this message will not be happen, this arise statement. We will see the example of this. What is the example? This is the numbers 40, 50, 60, 70. Length is what? 10, right? Length is means range. Range is what? 10. If length is greater than length of numbers, rise index error. Okay, length len, print no execution, else print length. So over here what will be happen, that rise index error will be executed, so no execution will be displayed because of what? Rise index error. Okay, because what is this is the range of the statement. So what we can say, We can say in this figure 1.6, in addition to the error message display, Python also display a stacked traceback. This is the structured block of text that contains information about the sequence of function calls that have been made in the branch of execution of code in which the exception has raised. In 1.6, the error has been encountered in most recently called function that has been executed. So over here we have to find out the length numbers. So length is what? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the length. So over here we have mentioned length is equals to 10, that is a range. That's why what we have to write, it is the index error. Okay, so index error is what? Over here they have mentioned what is index error. Index error is the index or subscript in the sequence is out of range. It is the out of range ka condition, right? That's why it is printing no execution, else it will print length. Okay, so length will be printing. So traceback most recent called last, file line 2, rise index error will be there. So index error, because of the index error the message will get print use of rise statement. Just we have to learn about the rise statement. What is rise exactly? So over here rise is the type of the error, that is over here mentioned the index error. So it will display the no execution, otherwise it will display the length. Okay, if there is the index error, then it will display no execution, otherwise it will display go to else part and it will display length. Okay, so according to me, instead of length there should be a range. Okay, range is equals to 10, otherwise it will length will be 4. The array length will be 4. That's why there is index error. It will not go to length part, that is else part. Now we will talk about, so in detail we will learn it in stack. Okay, about stack in chapter 3. In that section this part will be cleared. Okay, then the assert statement. An assert statement in Python is used to test an expression in the program code. We have to test the expression in the program code. This is the expression, use of assert statement. Print use of assert statement, def negative check number, assert len number is greater than equal to 0, oops negative number. Okay, this is the use of the assert statement. That is print number into number, print negative check 100, print negative check minus 350. That is the use of the assert statement. How we can use the assert, that is negative number check. Okay, number should be greater than 0, and the number we have to take, whatever number we will take, that will be multiplied with each other. Then the print is negative check 100, and if the negative check is minus 350, so what will be the output? Use of assert statement, that will print, otherwise it will print the number, that is 100 into 100, that is 1000, and next it is what? None. Okay, because of what? Assertion error, oops negative number. Okay, so what will be the output? Oops negative number will be the output. Okay, so it will not display the negative check. Okay, it will just display the print statement, not display the negative check. None will be displayed if it is a negative number, because the number should be greater than 0. Okay, the condition is what? Number should be greater than 0. So the answer will be use of assert statement 10,000 and none. Then handling exception. Each and every exception has to be handled by the programmer to avoid the program from crashing abruptly. This is done by writing additional code in the program to give proper message or instruction to the user on encountering an exception. This process is called as exception handling. If it's encountered the exception, it is called, and then we will handle the exception by taking some of the negative numbers or positive numbers. This is the case of assert statement. Then what else we have taken, that is the rise statement. This is the example, this is the type of the exception handling. So this is just each and every exception has to be handled by the programmer to avoid the program from crashing abruptly. Okay, we avoid the crashing, and then we will use the handling expressions, and then that the code will be executed. That is called as exception handling. Need of exception handling, that is exception handling is been used not only in Python programming but most in the programming language like C++, Java, Ruby, and that also exception handling will be used. It is useful technique that helps in capturing runtime error. At the runtime error only this will executed, and handling them so that to avoid the program getting crashed. Following are some of the important points regarding exceptions and their handling. Okay, this is Python categories exceptions, exception handling. Python categories different types of the exceptions. Code handle that particular exceptions can be created for each type. Exception handlers separate the main logic of the program from the error detection and correction code. The segment of code where there is any possibility of error or exception is placed inside one block. The code to be executed in case the exception has occurred is placed inside another block. Okay, if the exception will be occurred, it will be placed to the another block. There will be different types of blocks inside block, and this statement for detection and reporting the exception do not affect the main logic of the program. The compiler or interpreter keeps the track of the exact position where the error has occurred. Exception handling can be done for both user-defined and built-in exceptions. Okay, built-in exception, user-defined exceptions means what? If we are defining something, then built-in exceptions, we already saw different types of exceptions, errors, right? This is built-in exception. Then process of handling the exceptions, and that we will saw the different exception objects like type, file name, position in the program, where the error has occurred. Okay, throwing an exception at the runtime, that is called as exception object. Okay, then what we can say, the runtime system searches the entire program of the block of the code called as exception handler that can handle the rise exception. Okay, so in short what we can say, exception handling is basically at the time of the runtime when there will be a syntax error or different types of the error, we can throw in the exception, and after throwing an exception we can compile it and then run it. That is exception handling. And then there were the different types of the exceptions, that is built-in exceptions. Then what else, handling exceptions. Okay, error, assert, we saw the assert also, assert statement. This is the different kind of exception. So you just need to remember that the exception handling is just because to search the different types of the error triggered at the time of the runtime, or we can say at the time of the compile time of the coding, and then execute the program according to the errors that we triggered and solve that error. Otherwise there may be any exceptions, we have to handle those exceptions. Assert statement also we saw, and then finally we can get the executed code according to requirement of the code. Okay, this is the flow chart. In that, an error encountered in the method, create exception object, exception is raised, runtime system searches for exception handler in the current method, that is throwing exception. Create exception object and exception is raised, that is what? Throwing exception. This is just a part of the theory. You just have to draw this kind of the flow chart. So you have to just mention an error encountered in the method, whatever method we have displayed in the Python, Java, C++, Ruby, whatever we have to use, we just have to use the code. We have to just mention the error encountered in the method. Then exception, create exception object, exception is raised, throwing this exception. Then runtime system searches for exception handler in the current method. Okay, after throwing the exception, we have to use the runtime method. Then found, not found, that you have to mention. If it is found, runtime exception will found, then execute the code catching an exception. And if it is not found, then searches for the method in call stack in reverse sequence. Okay, again it will going to the found, and again if it is not found, then program terminates. Okay, understood? First we have to create the error in the method if it is encountered. Okay, create, not create, if it is encountered, an error encountered in the method. In the method there may be the error. Then we have to create the object, exception object, and exception is right, that is throwing an exception. Then the runtime process will occur. If at the runtime there may be the exception handler. If it is found, then we execute the code that is catching an exception according to the exceptions that executed the code. If at the runtime system exception handler is not found, then we have to searches for the method in the reverse order, forwarding the exception, and lastly we terminate the program. Okay, then catching the exception. How we can try and catch block, that we already know. Try and catch block, that you have to see how we can use try except exception name. Okay, in try, program statement where exceptions might occur, then the except, that is exception name, code for exception handling if the exception name error is encountered. Okay, then try except block. Okay, this is one of the try and catch ka block. Exception name also will be there. Okay, in try, print practicing for try block. Numerator is 50, denominator int, input enter the denominator, quotient will be numerator divided by denominator, print quotient, print division performed successfully. Okay, and accept zero division error. Okay, understood? If it is divided by 0, the exception handling will be occur. So print is what? Denominator as 0, not allowed. Okay, and then print outside try block. Try block will be print, will get print. Okay, so try also there. In try we have to mention the different conditions. Then if there will be the exception, that is 0 division error, it will get print the denominator as 0, not allowed, otherwise it will be printing outside try block. Okay, so try except block, so it will get print. Okay, in try block whatever will be there, that will get print. Then next one will be outside try except block is displayed in this code. Let's start with this. Over here we have mentioned the partitioning for try block, enter the denominator 12, division performed successfully outside try except block. Over here we have mentioned the partitioning for try block. Okay, this is what? This is the statement. What statement? The statements following the try except block is executed and message outside try except block is displayed in this code also. This message is also displayed because of what? Will be restarting the code, then partitioning for try block, enter the denominator, it will denominator 12, division performed successfully outside try except block. Okay, outside try except block. That is the answer. Okay. So if the denominator is 12, numerator and denominator is the question, and the answer will be division performed successfully because it is not divisible by 0. So the answer will be outside try except block. Okay, that is only the output, because we have not mentioned over here the all conditions. Okay, this is what just the Python ka shell. I'm just explaining the code over here and what will be the output. Otherwise output, that is exception raised, that is if the denominator is 0, denominator as 0 not allowed, outside try except block. Okay, now next one is what? Use of multiple except clauses. Okay, over here the next condition is, if we have not mentioned the numerator and quotient, it will not get print, right? They have just mentioned the denominator ka part. Okay, then only we will get the exception ka part. Okay, now next one is use of multiple except clauses. Print handling multiple exceptions. Try numerator, denominator, print except 0 division error, except value error. Okay, so over here they have mentioned the 0 division error and value error, that already we know. Then except without specifying an exception. Okay, that is also we know. What is the difference between use of multiple except clauses? Over here we have mentioned the 0 division ka error and value error, right? That is, value error means what? Only integers should be entered, right? And over here what they have mentioned, only integers should be entered and except oops some exception raised, right? So that is exception without specifying an exception. Handling exception without naming them. Enter the denominator 0, oops some exception raised. So understood what is multiple exception clauses. Different exceptions part will be there, that is value error is also, 0 division error is also. Over here what we have mentioned, value error, and other is what? Specifying an exception. Okay, what is the output of some exception raised if the denominator is 0. So that is the different cases of the exception with the built-in exception. That is try except else clause. Over here what we have mentioned, try mention, else part is also the result of division operator is quotient. Okay, that is mentioned over here with a 0 division error also and value error also. Okay, so over here this is mentioned, enter the denominator, division performed successfully, the result of division operation is also mentioned. Okay, this is the output. If you have taken 50 and the denominator is 5, the answer will be 10, that is question will be 10, right? That is in float. Okay, why it is in float? Can anyone tell me why it is in float? It is 10.0 because the only integer should be entered. Okay, so the result of division operation is quotient. So if the type is 50, the answer will be 50 divided by 5, that the answer will be 10. So always the answer will be in floating format. Okay, then finally clause. Okay, that is finally clause, try, catch, and finally. That is the finally clause. Over here the same example has mentioned, that is numerator, denominator, and finally the printing will be over and out. So the answer will be over and out. Answer will be the same. The numerator will be there, denominator will be there, quotient will be there, and finally the answer will be over and out. So recovering and continuing with finally clause. Over here what they have mentioned, this is the same question will be there, the same recovering through the finally clause. Over here what will be the answer? Practicing for try block, enter the denominator where, over and out. So there is mentioned value, invalid literal for int with the base 10 where. That's why there will be the error. So finally we'll get execute, that is over and out. Okay. So this is the summary. Syntax error or parsing error are detected when we have not followed the rules of the particular programming language while writing the program. Okay, that is the summary. When syntax error is encountered, Python displays the name of the error and small description about the error. Okay, the execution of the program will start only after the syntax error will rectified, right? The exception is Python object that represent an error. Syntax error are also handled as the exception. Okay, now what we can say, the exception needs to be handled by the programmer so that the program does not terminate abruptly. Exception will be used because if there may be any error, at that time the exception will get executed and it will not terminate abruptly. Okay, so finally there is some built-in exceptions: syntax error, value error, IO error, keyboard interrupt, import error, EOF error, zero division error, index error, name error, indentation error, type error, and overflow error. Okay, when an error is encountered in the program, Python interpreter raised or throws an exception. Okay, so this is the summary that you have to just go through it. Exception handlers are codes that have designed to execute when a specific exception is raised, right? And then raising an exception involves interpreting the normal flow of the program execution and jumping to the exception handler, directly jumps to the exception handler if there may be any exception or there may be any error. Then raise and assert statement also we saw. Then what else we saw? We saw the crashing abruptly, okay, at the time of the coding. Now exception is said to be caught when the code that is designed to handle a particular exception is executed. An exception is caught in the try block and handles in the except block. Okay, except block is also there, right? And except block, what we have saw, we just saw the except, that is exception zero division error and exception value error. Okay, this is the type of the error we have to mention in except, that is in exception. So this is the summary, just you have to go through it. So last one is what? The statement inside the finally block are always executed regardless of whether an exception occurred in try or block. Okay, try block or not. This is the exercise, you have to go through it. If you have any doubt, we will saw in the next lecture. Okay, so you just have to solve this exercise, and if you have any doubt you can ask me in the next lecture. I'll also solve this exercise and give the notes regarding this exercise in the next lecture. Okay, thank you so much.